Ruth is my mother's name, so make sure you're listening up. I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, and this is Come Follow Me, Get to the Point. I'm the author of the book of Consider My Servant Job, and with Come Follow Me, Get to the Point, I always show up, I always come prepared, we never take roll, and it's bring your own refreshments, can of soda pop. So today what we are studying is the book of Ruth and Samuel 1 through 3, 1 Samuel 1 through 3. These are we're going back to the history, so these are the more accessible parts of the Old Testament. It's not like we're reading a technical manual or instruction or assembly guides from an Ikea. We're talking about people and their life experiences. And so if you're a bit off-put, like reading about how to perform sacrifices in Leviticus, take heart. We're going back to some of the more accessible parts. And these are actually two of the best books. These books focus on women. In fact, Ruth is one of two books in the Old Testament that focus on woman, Ruth, and then also the other one is Esther, which happens to be my niece's name. This also lends itself for compare and contrast. We did in the old schools. So you have Ruth, you have Hannah in the book of Samuel, you have Deborah, the book of Judges, you have Esther. Plus, you also have women in the background of the other books, and so you can put these all together and understand how women work within the society of the Jewish society, and also take heart and come up with some lessons in your own life, how to relate to them. I'm kind of getting off topic now. This is actually should be a short clip, so let me see where I am at the notes. Okay, so let's go through the book of Ruth. It's 4 chapters long. Josephus was able to compress it down to 4 paragraphs in his History and Antiquities of the Jews. But this is a great story. It's a 4-chapter romance novel, and it's interesting. You see how people live under the law of Moses is one of the important points. It's about marriage, death, widowhood, love, and also it's important because Ruth is one of the ancestresses of Jesus Christ, which you read about in the last chapter. So here's like some of the key points. You have family loyalty, blended families. Another thing, too, is in chapter 2, it uses the word hap. But we all know that just God is guiding people when Ruth starts gleaning in the fields of Boaz. And gleaning is important. In the law of Moses is when you'd harvest a field, you couldn't cut the corners of the field, and you had to leave the wheat or the corn, as it says in King James there, for poor people to come into your field and to gather them. And that's how they took care of dealt with poverty issues, one of the several ways they took care of poverty issues, that they'd leave these fields with the corners cut, and if you're really generous, you kind of cut back, and you see that's what Boaz does. He really is very nice to Ruth, but that's how they dealt with poverty issues. So they helped poor people, but this wasn't handouts. They had to go out there and glean them, and yeah, certain people are physically incapable of that, but not everyone, and this helps, and this isn't advocating a policy. The thing is, okay, what does the Bible teach about it, regardless of what your political party affiliation is? Another important thing to look at is Naomi's role as a mentor. Sometimes we're the person being mentored, and the person who's a mentor, or I should say Mentrix. That's the actually correct Latin term. It's fun to look in the history of the word mentor. It has an interesting history. Some feminists use the term femtor, but Mentrix is more the correct one. That's the female form, as an aviatrix or imperatrix. And then, like, the last thing is that Ruth is an ancestress of King David, and also of Jesus Christ, since Christ is of King David's lineage. Book of Samuel. So it begins with the common theme of a barren woman. And you read about that in the Old Testament, is that women who were married but didn't have children. And you have that really funny comment from her husband Elkanah, is that, aren't as good as 10 sons. And it's funny how men take it one way, women take that comment the other way, and that's some of the unintentional humor you get in the Old Testament. So, and how she prays over her childlessness with the infertility issue. And then you have that incident where Eli thinks that she's drunk, and there's actually a rule in the Old Testament about being drunk in the temple. I'll put these in the notes below, the location of it. And sometimes priesthood leaders make a mistake, and it's okay to speak up about that if a mistake has been made, and say, I'm sorry, I think there's a mistake here. I'm not drunk, I'm praying. And what happens is that her prayer and vow gets fulfilled. Samuel is born, and she nurtures him and makes a little coat for him. And that's one of the tender things that, it gives a sense of authenticity, that They'd put that little detail in there. And this is another compare and contrasting. Compare Samuel to Eli's own son. And I'll talk about that in the next lesson where it gets really out of hand. So let's skip down to chapter 3, which is a famous where Samuel gets called by God, where he's sleeping, and he hears God's voice. And he thinks it's Samuel. And then once again, Samuel serves as a mentor, and he's teaching a younger person. Okay, when God does ask God to teach you, and Samuel gets the call extended to him. So, like I said, we're done. These are fun stories, or I shouldn't say stories, these are actually histories. And sometimes what throws people off, they get taken, these are just stories or myths or fairy tales. Like, if this is all hypothetical, then what was going on at the Kirtland Temple? Moses appeared to there, someone from Abraham's day, and he had Elijah. And if these are all myths, so these myths came to the Kirtland Temple. And yeah, that's how some people interpret things. But going back to Sam, another thing to remember is that Eli was an imperfect priesthood leader, and he made mistakes. And we're going to study those in the next lesson, but that didn't hurt his validity as a priesthood leader. And that's something you see through in the Doctrine and Covenants, with Joseph Smith losing the 116 pages to section 93, where the entire first presidency gets rebuked for neglecting their children. And that's something to think about when you get your temple recommend interview. You can sustain a church leader even if they're imperfect. And that's like how that works out, is something you get to work out on your own. So let's hit the last section. We're at 6 minutes. This is great. We're at the last section is the Christ Quotient. So first of all, you have Christ lineage. And you think about the type of spiritual heritage we have that Christ had with Ruth and Boaz, and the type of people that were ancestors. They created a culture in the home that passed on to Jesus Christ's life with Mary and Joseph. The other thing to think about is the day-to-day living. What does it mean to be a disciple? Where you're following the law of Moses. Ruth was poor, but she followed the poor widow, and they talk about widows a lot in the rest of the prophetic scriptures about not ignoring them, but how she was a self-reliant person, that she was out there in the fields gleaning and doing all she could, even though she was poor. Another thing to think about is the attitude towards women, is that you have Ruth and Hannah, Esther. You have the other woman in the Old Testament, and it's a little bit different than what arose in the apostate culture about the status of woman. Like you had Deborah as a prophetess who was also a political leader. But also the thing is, I think the overarching thing is the lessons on spirituality, that as you're living day-to-day life and dealing with all these small decisions that you have to do with being a saint, what does it mean to follow Christ? What does it mean to follow the law of Moses and be a good person? Because as Benedict pointed out, the law of Moses points you to Christ, and that's the point.